so glad that you took the time to come down and visit with us. You come to the conference a lot. Why do you come?
Oh my goodness, this is, first of all, great memories of the early days when there were so few of us. And, you know, I've told this story a million times, but it was more like a small support group. We knew everything about each other. We'd meet year to year, and it was the same, you know, small group. It would grow a little bit each year, but I knew who people were dating, where they, you know, whether they had a breakup, what legislation they'd introduced, what the milestones were. And, you know, you're talking about corporate sponsors for a conference. We passed a hat for a few dollars from each other so that we could have somebody do the postage for next year's conference. And, you know, it was a very small vote to figure out who would host it the next year. And it's so marvelous to see how much it's changed and yet how much it remains the same. You were saying, Annise, that one of the most valuable things you can get out of this is the support and mentorship and friendship and relationship building that you have with other leaders, with other elected officials. And that has not changed. But to see so many raise their hands as elected officials, as first-time attendees, it just warms my heart. We're multiplying the role models out there. It's so great.
Well, you talked about meeting the first few years of this conference, and it was a small group and like a small group support group. You've been a party of one for a while in the Senate. What's going to change with Kirsten? What's the possibility?
Oh my. Well, I think that there's all sorts of opportunities presented. I wish that we met more frequently as a whole Senate so that it wouldn't just be the Democratic caucus of the United States Senate that hears our voices during some of our strategic discussions. But there is a difference, a fundamental difference from being outside the room where the caucus might be talking about you and inside the room where they're talking with you. It changes everything. And you know, when there were no women in the room, where there's no members of the LGBTQ community in the room, you know, some allies think they're experts. And we love our allies, but we like to actually use our own voices and share our own stories. And we also have to win over others. And it's going to make a really big difference. There's so many ways in which Kirsten Sinema will bring a new voice and a new perspective also in talking about the larger LGBTQ community.
So you represent Wisconsin, she represents Arizona. We had congressional gains in Kansas, which is phenomenal. Unlikely places to elect high-level, openly LGBTQ elected officials. What's happening there? What's the secret to success in red states, or seemingly red states?
I'd say a few things about that. One is something that Wisconsin has some bragging rights on, which was we were the first state in 1982 to pass a non-discrimination law that covered individuals based on sexual orientation. It didn't include gender identity, but it included sexual orientation. And it was housing, employment, public accommodations, education. And I think it was 7 more years before the next state adopted a similar law. And I know even back then, a lot of people said, Wisconsin, why that, you know, that's flyover territory. Why is, what's in the water, if you will? You know, I do think a lot of these issues are issues of fundamental fairness that people do relate to. By the way, I should have mentioned, it was a Republican governor who signed that law into effect in the state of Wisconsin. But I also think that right now, talking about a rainbow wave, but a rainbow wave in places you wouldn't expect it. It's arguable that some of us have had to be more vocal throughout our lives to speak out against intolerance or discrimination. But it's also likely that we've worked in coalition and alliance with other movements that impact everyone. And so when we're working for economic equity, economic progress for the LGBTQ community, we are also doing so for all communities by way of an example. And I think that the candidates that I watched closely throughout last year and this year's election cycle were speaking about the issues that make a difference in their constituents' lives, the things people worry about, wake up in the middle of the night about. And they made their cases, and the voters were going to vote not based on their sexual orientation or gender identity, but because there was somebody who was going to fight for them and knew how to fight. I would also say that being out, in the time that I first got involved in public service, we always feared it would be a liability, and some people remained in the closet as they sought elective office. And I remember when I came out in the process of running for local office and having people comment about my integrity. That that's something that voters want in candidates and elected officials, is people who are honest, forthright, and have integrity. And they saw that in the act of coming out and being visible and vocal and out.
So there are some opportunities clearly in conservative places, supposed red states, but you also had a big target painted on your back precisely because it was perceived as a red state and you were a very blue senator. So tell me a little bit about how that felt. That started very early on.
Yes, it did. So I remember early in 2017, somebody letting me know that there was an attack on television in Wisconsin against me. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, if this is starting now, this is going to be really a horrible ordeal. And by January of this year, I was the #1 target among all of my colleagues who were running for re-election to the United States Senate, including and especially those running in states that Trump won. And I think by the beginning of the year, there was about $6 or $7 million that had been spent already. And we saw by the end of it, $14 million of outside money spent. Now, I'm not suggesting that Republicans had nothing to do with it, but what I am suggesting is that most of that spending came from mega donors. That we read about the Koch brothers network of funders for conservative causes. And we hear about Richard Uihlein and his funding of candidates and causes. And these folks have an agenda. And their agenda relates to gaining more power so that they can, win or rig the system, however you want to put it, however strongly you want to word it, in their favor. And it's not just enough, apparently, to hire an army of lobbyists to come in and try to persuade elected officials. They've taken that step further to say, let's buy ourselves legislators or invest so much in these races that we basically can fix the outcome. And we fought back against that very explicitly and reminded Wisconsinites that these folks weren't from Wisconsin, that they had an agenda. It didn't align with the Wisconsin way, the Wisconsin set of values, or the things that people were worried about, and that I was going to fight for them. And it was effective, but it was very frightening to see so much money in politics and so much investment on the part of these individuals to get compliant members of important legislative bodies. And we all have to watch out about that.
Did you recognize yourself when you saw those attack ads?
Oh gosh, no. And perhaps also the people of Wisconsin decided that they didn't either, that this was not, I had a record of work that, but I don't want to suggest that the message was the only element in a real successful election. I have never seen as much grassroots participation in our elections in Wisconsin as I have this past year. And by the way, if you're watching what's going on in Wisconsin, that grassroots activity is continuing through this week because of some huge shenanigans that are going on, and that's the Wisconsin nice way of telling you that there's a huge power grab going on before our new governor and new attorney general.
I was gonna ask you about that next, because even though $14 million was spent to take you out, and actually there were Democratic candidates in other parts of the country where they're saying, yeah, spend more money against Tammy, because they didn't have it to spend against them. But you had coattails. You won decisively. You had coattails, and the reason they're having this big fight now in Wisconsin is that Democrats were swept into office, and a lot of Republicans are saying, oh my God, how do we stop them? So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I want to dwell just for a non-humble moment on the coattails piece, because I came in 2012, or was elected in 2012, and it was Obama's re-election race, and he had done this amazing job of organizing and funding organization in important states like Wisconsin. And I felt like, I got an advantage because I was able to work with a very sophisticated organization. And, like, I certainly didn't coast on coattails, I can tell you that. We fought hard. And this time I was at the top of the ticket. I'm really the only major Democratic statewide elected official, and I had to build that infrastructure. And we started very, very early, and ended up doing this amazing job, and in part because some of these activists were doing an amazing job on their own, and all we were doing is saying, okay, we're so glad you're active now, keep on working on healthcare, and then when the elections come around, we want to have you working with us on the elections. It worked really well, but I won with just under 11 points. And that is the most,
big win, decisive win.
We started the cycle saying that my ceiling was probably 52 or 53 because we're a deeply polarized state that has been trending red. And so on election night, or actually more truthfully, the morning of the next day, we saw the results in the rest of the statewide races. And we had won narrowly the governorship, the lieutenant governorship, the state treasurer, and the attorney general. And totally flipped it around. So yes, people in the LGBTQ community can have coattails too.
But there's a big anti-democratic effort. Same thing happened in North Carolina, and now it's happening in Wisconsin. And couple of other places as well where the outgoing Republican leadership is trying to hamstring the new incoming leadership. What can be done about that, or what is being done about that there?
Well, first of all, it is a huge disrespect to the voters of our state. They voted for change. They voted for Tony Evers to be our governor. They voted for Josh Kaul to be our attorney general. They voted in this great group of leaders who talked about things in their campaigns that Wisconsinites wanted to hear and wanted to see go into effect. One was protecting access to the ballot, because that same legislature has been trying time and time again to whittle away access. And two, they talked about health care, as did I in running for re-election to the Senate, and protecting people with pre-existing health conditions. And Wisconsin is one of those states, sadly, in that big lawsuit to try to take away people's health care by having the Affordable Care Act declared unconstitutional. So what is this legislature doing? They passed a bill to curtail early voting. And they passed a measure to deny the governor and the attorney general specifically from being able to withdraw from this lawsuit that would take away thousands of people's health care in our state, and said that the legislature gets to vote on such things, and have frustrated our incoming governor's ability to do what governors do in a number of major instances. They're making it impossible to fulfill pledges made during the course of this last campaign. And I'm sure that these things will be challenged in court as separation of powers, as well as on the early voting matter. They had passed this before, and a court had struck it down, and they're passing it again. So hopefully we'll have pretty good odds in that court.
Well, focusing on you and hitting the ground running again in January as you take office again, you're going to have new colleagues, you're going to have new opportunities to make a difference. But it's been my experience that those quiet backroom conversations, not the public speeches, are the places where most change happens. I understand that you had an opportunity, many of us now know who Jeff Flake is. I understand you had an opportunity to influence a very significant vote of his. And would you describe that a little bit, about that private conversation and how it played out publicly?
And I feel comfortable talking about it now because actually his son was interviewed for a major article on why his dad voted for, at that time it was an inclusive ENDA in the Senate. And so his son kind of told this story. But I had served with Jeff Flake in the House of Representatives, and we had both been elected in the same year to the United States Senate. And I knew that he had voted for ENDA, but a non-inclusive, so it didn't include gender identity, in the House. But I had also heard that he was very much wavering on taking the same action in the United States Senate because the bill had been, it was inclusive of gender identity protections also. And I happen to know, and this is actually also from the backroom conversations, that when I was in the House and I was counting votes, I was always counting and speaking with both Democrats and Republicans. And I had run into a colleague, a Republican colleague in the House, who told me about their transgender child. And confessed, even though we didn't know each other very well, that he hadn't told many of his colleagues, Democrat or Republican, that one of his children was transgender. But he said, I will absolutely be with you on ENDA. And at the time, I was trying to make the House bill inclusive. When I was watching Jeff Flake struggle with this vote and hearing that he was likely to vote no, I called up my former colleague in the House and said, would you be willing to have a private conversation if I can persuade Jeff to give you a call? And he said, absolutely, anything I can do. And so I gave, a little piece of paper to Jeff with his phone number, and I said, as you're making your final decision, please don't make it until you talk to your old friend, your old colleague. And so Jeff made the call and was persuaded, not from me, but from one of his former Republican colleagues, that he had to do the right thing. And yeah, and I still remember getting a text from him like the next morning going, I spoke with former colleague, I'm voting for this, don't ever do this to me again. Which he didn't mean the way it sounds, but just sort of like, I don't want to have to go through such a huge emotional...
That didn't last very long, did it?
And so, yes, those conversations, I would have probably never spoken about it publicly until he decided to, to go public with this conversation. But yeah, you can learn a lot, sometimes in the privacy of a dinner or event like that.
Well, you've never been shy about advocating as necessary for the LGBTQ community, and you've always been out and open in your many different offices that you've held, but your first job is to represent the citizens of Wisconsin.
It is.
And how do you divide your energy there between your desire to advocate for the larger LGBTQ community and your responsibilities to your constituents?
I guess I don't often think about it as dividing or allocating my time. First of all, I have many LGBTQ constituents in the state of Wisconsin.
You do have Madison, after all.
and I have, well, I was going to say, I'm thinking about a farm visit I had in very rural Wisconsin to a farm run by a lesbian who gets on famously with her colleagues across the county, and so it's not just Madison. But I'll tell you a quick story about when I was first running for Senate. We do research to try to figure out how, what issues matter, and we were certainly curious about how statewide voters were going to deal with an out lesbian running for the statewide office, the United States Senate. And so we did a focus group, and there was this, for some reason they separate the men and the women, because for some reason the men talk over the women when they're together. I don't know what that's about. I don't want to be sexist here. But two of us girls talking, right? In any event. And so the topic of my being gay and came up in this focus group, and one guy was really agitated and sort of shifting, and the interviewer looked at him and said, after other people had spoken, you look like you have something to say. And she was thinking he was going to be furious and homophobic, and he said, my sister is gay and I love her. It was like, oh, that's not what we were expecting. It is, but so, in answer to the question, that I don't look at it as really saying how much time do I look at LGBTQ issues, how much time. Some of that is beyond one's control. What is Mitch McConnell going to put on the floor next week? It means that I'm going to have to focus some attention. What's on the committee's agenda? What are my constituents bringing up? And what did I run on and say I do? And that is fight for Wisconsin. And it is to fight for everyone in America, because that is our job.
Let us thank again Senator Tammy Baldwin.
Oh.
Don't go away. I actually met Senator Baldwin 86, 87, I can't remember exactly when, at one of those early meetings. I was not an elected official, she was. I had a huge crush on her and was a little bit intimidated by her. She's taller, she's younger, she's blonder, and she's still fabulous. But we're looking for who the next Tammy Baldwin might be. And we decided to create an award recognizing the fact that there are folks out there who are running for office, achieving office, and who have an opportunity to be transformative in our community. And so we asked you to tell us who the up-and-comers were. And we had dozens and dozens of names submitted to us. And just as we did last year, where we honored Florida State Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith, we had to whittle the names down. So we took the dozens of names we received, we took 5 names, we put them back out to you and asked you to vote on a rising star, someone who you could see 5 years, maybe 10 years from now, continuing to move up the political process and change politics in America. The nominees were California State Assembly Member Evan Lowe, California State Assembly Member Todd Gloria. California was big this year. Colorado State Representative Leslie Herod, Massachusetts State Senator Julian Cyr, and Virginia Delegate Danica Roem. And we had thousands of you vote. I don't know that there were lots of you voting 1,000 times, but thousands of you voted. And I'm thrilled to invite Senator Baldwin up to present the award to this year's winner. And it's not so much for what she has done, but what we hope to see her do in the future. And we know where her heart is, so we expect great things. Senator Baldwin?
Oh, well, I often say that I didn't run to make history. I ran to make a difference. And that is the same inspiration that drove Danica in her 2017 campaign to run for and win the opportunity to serve in Virginia's 13th district in the House of Delegates. Danica stepped up as a first-time candidate for the Virginia General Assembly and listened to the people of her community. She ran to serve and make a difference in people's lives, expanding access to affordable, quality health care, and focusing on economic and transportation issues with an all politics' local promise to fix Virginia State Route 28. Danica has worked to get the job done, voting to expand Medicaid and bring health care to 3,700 of her constituents who need it. She has worked to deliver funding for a new commuter bus that will start serving her district this month. She ran to make a difference in people's lives, and she is doing just that. When Danica assumed office in January, she made history as the first openly transgender person to be seated in a U.S. state legislature, and by doing so, she blazed the trail for others to follow. And while both Danica and I recognize that firsts represent history, we also know that it's the seconds and the thirds and the nexts that will represent real progress. progress where no one sees their sexual orientation or gender identity as a roadblock or obstacle to public service. Danica is an inspiration to me and an inspiration to so many LGBTQ individuals and families across this country. And as she said, there are millions of transgender people in this country. We all deserve representation in government, and she's right. And Danica is doing right to help our country become a place where a transgender person does not have to close their eyes to imagine what it would be like to have someone like themselves serving in elective office, because they can open their eyes and see Danica Roem. I am honored to present the 2018 Tammy Baldwin Breakthrough Award to Danica Roem. And do I have a... Okay.
What's up, DC? No. For all you out-of-towners, you're in my turf now. What's up, DC? All right. My name is Danica Roem. I am proud to represent the people of the city of Manassas Park and the Prince William County portions of Haymarket, Gainesville, and my lifelong home, Manassas, in the Virginia House of Delegates, representing the 13th District. And I'm on stage right now with two of my superheroes. This is like, yeah. Wow, this is cool. Okay, so I've done a lot of victories events over the last 2 years, and you all have been incredibly kind to me. The whole victory board and team, from the staffers, from Sean and Reggie and everyone else who's been running around, to Chris Aveling, the board of directors, who have been absolutely incredibly just kind, generous, and enthusiastic in supporting us. And here we are. All three of us know what this is like, to have to take a look at the community around us and say, hey, the people who are in charge, they're not representing me, or they don't look like me, or they don't come from my background, or something is missing here. And wait a minute, why is it that the people in charge are singling me out, stigmatizing me, ostracizing me, attacking me for being myself? That doesn't seem right. Isn't the whole point of elected government to serve the people who you represent? Constituent service is the bedrock of elected government. And if you ever forget that, then you need to be out of public office. And it is impossible to serve your constituents when you are attacking them. You can't. You cannot serve a constituent by singling them out, by stigmatizing them, by making them other than, by making them less than, by making them out to be someone who is a threat because of whether it's the ideology, or whether it's the color of their skin, or whether it's just the thought that they represent something different, as if they don't represent your community too. And here's the thing, I represent now 83,000 people. 83,000 people across Northern Virginia. And I look at them, I don't care whether they vote for me or not. I hope they do come next November. But if they have a constituent service request, my job is to honor it. And the whole reason that I voted to expand Medicaid to 400,000 Virginians and 3,800 of my uninsured constituents is one, it was the right thing to do. Number two, what better act of constituent service is there than to look at your constituent from Manassas, in my case, and her name is Karen Murdoch, who doesn't have an arm below her elbow because of an amputation. And she didn't have health insurance. And her health insurance company previously had told her that to have a mechanical prosthetic device would be considered a luxury. And they offered her a hook instead. That's not right. And come January 1st, for the first time in years, she's gonna have affordable, quality health insurance through Medicaid. And I look at her, and I said, you're my constituent. That's why I do what I do for you. And then I look at my other constituents who just have been battling it out on Route 28 and 66 and 15 and all these other roads for so long. And I said, you know what, my mother's been commuting up and down 28 for 39 years, and it's just gotten worse. And nothing's gotten better between Yorkshire and Centerville. And so I campaigned on it everywhere from elementary school parking lots to the, after the election, to the red carpet of the AMAs as Demi Lovato's date, because clearly that's a thing that happens to state legislators all the time. And like, so they put me on camera on the red carpet, and I just like, all right, well, this is my one moment because I ain't the star of this show. And so the second that they give you the microphone, you better use it. I was like, well, yes, you know, I'm here to also advocate against bullying. This is great. That's why she invited me out. Awesome. And, you know, we can't get lost discriminating against each other, the people we have to serve. We need to focus on things like fixing Route 28 and blocking the Dominion power lines out in Gainesville and Haymarket. And we needed, and so I just went hyper-local. And so the newspaper coverage the next day was like, Roem appears with Demi Lovato at AMA, semicolon, talks Route 28. Best headline ever. And what happened this past June? The Northern Virginia Transportation Authority voted to allocate $128 million for Route 28 improvements. Yes. Including the widening in Centerville. Awesome. But I know I don't have a lot of time here to talk to you about why the I-66 Route 28 interchange that's happening right now as I speak is a good thing. It is. And I'm not going to tell you all so much about how expanding Medicaid also allowed us to bring home enough federal dollars so that we could use our state dollars to raise teacher pay by 3% come July 1st next year. What's up? All across the Commonwealth. I'm not going to talk to you all so much about the fact that the state budget that I voted for also, for the first time, raises the age cap for autism-related health insurance coverage for kids now from age 10 up to 18. And I'm now working across party lines to mandate that across the state for all private plans, all up to 18. We don't have to go into all those issues. What we do have to go into is the very, very victory concept that representation is power, and we need more of it. And when I was here last year, that was the message that we had. And today, when I have a girl in Salem in Southwest Virginia come up to me when I was campaigning, knocking doors for my friend Carter Turner down there, and she says, I've never met another trans girl before. Can you be my mentor? And I'm like, honey, I live 200 miles away from you. I won't be that person in your day-to-day life. But I know some incredible people from the Ladies and Gents of the Blue Ridge, a trans advocacy group down here who can help you out. Because here's the thing, you're never too young to teach and you're never too old to learn. And that girl is now gonna be able to teach those older folks about what it is like to be someone like her who's in school and going through transition. And those older folks are gonna be able to tell her, hey, here's how it's done. Here is the community that we've created. And when the community rises, and when the community is stronger, then our Commonwealth of Virginia is stronger, then our United States of America is stronger, and it should be known across the country, and it should be known from State Senator Adam Ebbins' district right over the Potomac, by the way, our first out-elected official in the Commonwealth of Virginia's General Assembly. It should be known that no matter what you look like, where you come from, how you worship, if you do, or who you love, that if you've got good ideas, if you're well qualified, then bring your ideas to the table, because this is our Virginia too. This is your Washington, D.C. too. This is our United States of America too. And it is time for us to run it, my friends. It is time for us to work together so that we can all thrive because of who we are, not despite it, and not for what discriminatory politicians tell us we're supposed to be. And it is up for us to speak together in one unified voice, to stand up for every LGBTQ person within our communities and across our country, and indeed here at the international conference around the world, so that every person in every part of the globe knows that we are always truly stronger together. Thank you so much.
She's here? All right. Now, we have another special guest. It's my pleasure to introduce one of our most fierce and vocal allies on Capitol Hill, the persistent Senator Elizabeth Warren. Yeah, that's right. Give her a standing ovation. I'm going to go ahead and continue to introduce her, but come on up. Come on up. Thank you. All right. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit. You might as well. Y'all are already standing up. I wanted her to come up on stage so you could see her. So glad that she's here. You know, you all know the meme about Senator Warren persisting, and I want to tell you that she's been persisting her whole life. She came from humble beginnings in Oklahoma City. She launched a successful academic career and rose to become a United States Senator, as we know. You may not know that she has a connection to my hometown of Houston, Texas. She's actually a graduate of the University of Houston. Go Cougs, yes. Senator Warren balanced an early marriage and motherhood with the demands of law school and even practiced law out of her living room in order to care for her young children. She persisted against long odds to accomplish the things that she has in her life. Joining the faculty at Harvard Law, becoming a nationally renowned expert on commercial law. In 2007, Senator Warren proposed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in order to, yes, an important institution, to ensure Washington was looking out for everyday Americans. 2012, she challenged an anti-LGBTQ incumbent for the U.S. Senate and won. She campaigned on marriage equality at a time when most leaders were still evolving on the issue and became the first woman to represent Massachusetts in the upper chamber. And just after she was elected, the organizer of Boston Pride asked if she would march again in next year's parade, and she replied, "Absolutely not. I'm not going to march at Pride. I want to dance at Pride." And she continues to dance and step up for our community over and over again. She's been ahead of the curve for a very long time. And among the many bills that Senator Warren is sponsoring is a landmark piece of legislation that would end discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity in public schools. We know she will persist for us as long as she has breath and as long as she's in the United States Senate. Senator Elizabeth Warren, our Congressional Ally of the Year.
That was so sweet. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and talk?
You can. I'll give you your award. You want your picture first or later?
Whichever way you want to do it.
Let's do it now.
Let's do it now. Okay. All right. So there we go. Good.
No pressure. You missed an amazing speech by Danica Roem. So.
I know. I just caught the last two lines. And I said, sign me up. I'm ready. I'm ready. Okay, you can hold that for me. So let me start out by just saying thank you very much for the very generous introduction, Mayor Parker. I very much appreciate it. Hello, Leaders Conference. I am glad to be with people who have evolved. It is so good to see you. You know, I actually just want to start by saying it is a huge honor to receive the Ally Award of the LGBTQ Victory Fund. I'm just delighted you're all here, and you just put icing on a cake by asking me to join you and even giving me an award while I'm here. It just means an enormous amount to me. I appreciate it very, very much, so thank you. You know, I am somebody who just never in a bazillion years thought that I would end up in politics. It was not on my to-do list, not on my bucket list, not on my anything list. But when I jumped into the Senate race in Massachusetts, I found out something in about a minute and a half, and that is nobody runs for office on their own and succeeds alone. That it takes strong allies, strong partners. It takes folks who are willing to pick up your fight along with you and bring it forward. And I saw that when I came to the Senate, that the challenges we face are too big to tackle alone. If we're going to make real change, then it is critical to have allies, and let me underscore this part, allies who know how to fight, allies who know how to get the job done, allies like the LGBTQ Victory Fund. So thank you all. You've been great allies in this. Thank you for 30 years of being on the front lines of making real change. And I am so delighted tonight to be here with my dear friend and my colleague from the United States Senate, Senator Tammy Baldwin, truly the best. So way to go, Tammy. Tammy and I have been in the trenches. We came in on the same day. We were sworn in together, and we've been in the trenches doing battle together for 6 years, and frankly, I got news for anybody who thinks this is the time to turn back the clock on equal rights. As we just keep saying, we're just getting started at this. So we're going to get right there, you bet. Now look, this speech has a lot of back and forth. We're just getting started, we're strong, we're going to make this happen, but let's face it, the last 2 years have been really tough. Under this administration, we have endured relentless assaults on our values, never-ending attacks on our democracy, and a wholesale destruction of just plain old common sense. But here's the part that keeps me warm at night. Even in the face of hateful, bigoted attacks, we refused to back down. If anything, we got stronger, and that's what I love. We fought together, we cried together, we resisted together, and we sure as hell persisted together. And on November 6th, the American people got organized and put power back in the hands of the people where it belongs. We took back the House of Representatives. We flipped state houses all across this country, and we fought tooth and nail until we made Kyrsten Sinema the first openly bisexual member of the United States Senate. I love it. Now, Democrats won big in this election, and for anyone who is still asking, yes, there was a blue wave. But blue wasn't the only color we saw on Tuesday night. Some might say there was a rainbow wave. Across this country, more openly LGBTQ candidates were elected than at any election in our lifetimes. LGBTQ candidates ran for elected office, up and down the ballot. And here's the best part. They didn't just run, they won. They won. And it is time to celebrate. I am delighted to be here at a celebration. But boy, a celebration that comes with a reminder, we are not done. LGBTQ Americans are still in the fight of our lives across this country, facing attacks every day and the potential rollbacks of basic human rights. We have a lot of work still to do. And now that Democrats control the House, change is coming to Washington. We're going to have a Washington on our side. So, take a deep breath, pull out a pen, mark what the list looks like, but start with pass the Equality Act to outlaw discrimination against LGBTQ Americans. once and for all. Anywhere, everywhere, discrimination is wrong. And preserve and expand important LGBTQ protections in healthcare, in education, in critical areas. And the third that I just try to keep preaching about, when Republicans attack LGBTQ people, we can't go silent. We have got to speak up, and we need to hold the Trump-Pence administration accountable. So I get it. The road ahead of us will not be easy. Trust me, the powerful in Washington don't give up just because they get knocked down. I hope you are ready to fight uphill for as long as it takes, because I'm going up that hill and I need you with me in this. Right-wing conservatives will try to let businesses refuse service to people based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. Our opponents will try to deny transgender and gender nonconforming people basic human rights like health care, housing, and employment. Cynics will say true equality just isn't attainable. Pundits will say you're naive even to try. The forces of division will keep trying to pit gay people against straight people, black people against white people, and young people against older people. Pit us against each other so we don't come together. They want us pointing fingers at each other so we don't notice their hands in our pockets. Yeah, we are facing an uphill battle. Nevertheless, we will persist. We have our work cut out for us in the years ahead, but I just want you to know, I am so proud to have the chance to stand shoulder to shoulder with you in this fight. This is a fight we fight from the heart, a fight we fight because it is right. And here's the thing, when you fight from the heart, when you fight for what is right, win or lose, you keep getting stronger, and you know that over time, we will win. So, thank you all. Thank you. Thank you.
So we've honored one of the icons of our movement. We have honored an ally, and as Senator Warren said, we know we can't achieve what we need to just by ourselves. We have to have allies, we have to have caring individuals who will stand shoulder to shoulder with us, but it is always better when we can advocate for ourselves. It's wonderful to have representatives in Congress. It's wonderful to have representatives in the United States Senate, but the two most powerful individual elected positions, besides the White House, are big city mayors and governors. And we not only double the number of United States senators from our community, we double the number of governors from our community. And it's my honor now to give you a brief introduction to our next speaker and our final speaker for the evening. You know, I know some of you have been to Colorado. Just over 25 years ago, Colorado voters passed Amendment 2. And if you're not old enough to remember Amendment 2, it was a ballot initiative that repealed the state's sexual orientation non-discrimination law. Colorado was dubbed the hate state in the media. I don't think that was ever entirely a fair description, but the perception was there for many nonetheless. And then 3 decades later, less than 3 decades later, 25 years later, Colorado has become the first state to elect an openly gay man as governor. Colorado voters deserve a lot of credit. Jared Polis deserves a lot of credit. But it wasn't just about the Colorado voters and an amazing whiz-bang campaign that Jared Polis ran. He had a record of service in Colorado. He wasn't an unknown quantity. He wasn't somebody who just parachuted in and said, oh, I'm excited, I'm going to run for governor. He won on the issues. He won on his track record of service. He won because people knew that Jared Polis would do what he committed to do. I had the opportunity to campaign with him on his bus tour through Colorado. I was very much impressed with his ability to connect with voters at the local level, voters of diverse backgrounds, but very much with his ability to hone in on the local issues that were most important to his constituents and to craft a message that resonated across the state. He was clear about his sexual orientation. He had his partner and children front and center often in the campaign. His sexual orientation was a non-issue for Colorado voters, and that's important. I don't know that I could have said that had he not already demonstrated his abilities for those voters. He'd already won a statewide race for a state school board position. He was a multi-term member of Congress, so he had that record on which to run. He not only served Coloradans well, though, he has served our LGBTQ community well, helping to lead the fight to protect trans students and joining his LGBTQ colleagues in pushing for pro-equality legislation. He made history for us on November 6th. Let us welcoming with all our hearts Jared Polis, Governor-elect of the state of Colorado.
Thank you, Mayor Parker.
Snuck up on me. I thought you were
you know, Annise was kind enough to join us in Colorado, not once, but twice. I think you came out. Did we impress you with our contingent for the Denver Pride Parade?
We did.
We had, I think, a record contingent for at least for an elected official. There were probably some other causes that had larger ones. And for those of you who haven't been to Denver Pride, come on out next June. I think we're the biggest thing between Chicago and California, with the exception of Texas. So please join us. You know, I am excited to be here. I want to say thank you to Victory Fund, of course, for inviting me tonight. I don't think Annise mentioned this in her introduction, but like a lot of you, my first exposure to Victory Fund was when I first ran for Congress. I went to a training. So the one I went to was in Atlanta. That would have been 2007. And then I ran for Congress. It had already started, but the election was in 2008. And so certainly while I had run for the state school board before and I had been involved, I certainly had never run for Congress before. And I got to meet a lot of other great folks that have allowed me since to enjoy the electoral success I have done. Caspi, what are you up to? The next line it says here is, I'm honored to be the first openly gay parent to win a seat in Congress. You know, and really Congress itself as an institution has even evolved just as society has, even in the short time I've been there. You know, when I was first elected, it was an honor, of course, to serve alongside the legendary Barney Frank, of course, Tammy Baldwin, who you heard from earlier. But there was no one else. I was the first openly gay man to be elected for the first time. We then elected a number of others, and I'm so excited. One of the things I was excited about is we had 6 members of the House that were LGBT. With the next 116th Congress, thanks in part, of course, to the work of Victory Fund and your work, there will be a record 8 members of the House of Representatives who are LGBT. So one of the things we did when I got there is we said, you know what? It used to be just Tammy and Barney. Now there's more of us. Let's form a caucus. Let's form a group. So we formed the Equality Caucus. We have over 100 members that support equality. Our LGBT members are co-chair. We were successful in launching a few initiatives. One of them was with the Victory Fund. There is a Victory Fund Fellow, which as the Dean of the LGBT members of Congress have been housed in my office the last couple sessions. We've had wonderful fellows. I think they will now move to David Cicilline's office. He'll be the senior most LGBT representative in future Congresses. We've also launched the political effort of the Equality Caucus through the Equality PAC, which I'm so proud to say from the days that we conceived it, and I was the first chair of it, in this last cycle, raised and donated over $2 million to LGBT federal candidates across the country. So when it comes to welcoming some of our terrific new representatives, like Sharice David and others, that is in part due to your donations, your friends' donations, the work of the Equality PAC, which shows, again, what you can accomplish in your state legislative bodies and your cities by working to make sure that, you know, you're the first and not the last, and that you bring others along with us. You know, representative government is at its best when elected officials look like everybody else. And of course that means orientation and gender identity. It means ethnicity, it means gender, it means background, your professional background, your economic background. And we know we're not there yet in so many ways, but we are making progress in the right direction. I mean, I, for one, certainly looked with great pride at the incoming freshman class of U.S. representatives. What an amazing, diverse class, at least on the Democratic side of the aisle. And it will actually result in better results that we have as well. And I'm proud that to see such great diversity among Victory Fund candidates as well, not only with regard to different orientations and gender identities, but again, ethnicities, geography, areas of the country that had never previously elected LGBT individuals, which has certainly been a focus of the Victory Fund. We really have a lot to celebrate this election, even in the face of great challenges nationally. We all know that in the age of Trump, he chooses to attack and divide rather than unite and elevate. One day it might be the immigrant community, one day it might be the Muslim community, and it might be kicking transgender brother and sisters out of the military the very next day. And that's what we've come to see from this president. But I think one of the responses by the people at the ballot box in Colorado and across the country is no more division. We want leaders, regardless of their orientation, straight, gay, bi, whatever they are, leaders who will unite people and who will stand up for everybody, who will elevate everybody, who will engage everybody and protect all of our rights to be who we are in this great country. And while Donald Trump and his administration haven't done any favors to the cause or the policy, I think they've inspired that counterbalance and counterreaction in the American people, who spoke very loudly with the greatest majority for voting for Democrats for the House of Representatives since Watergate, and with a record number of successes across our state legislative policies as well. It's been an honor to, in my time in Congress, fight to move the equality agenda forward, being in the room in the formation days of the Equality Act, the author of the Student Non-Discrimination Act, which is more important than ever before with the current Secretary of Education removing protections from our schools and from women and victims of sexual assault in higher education, rather than expanding and protecting everybody's right to learn and achieve and really recognize the great American dream. I'm proud that there's a number of folks here from Colorado. We have our first LGBT African-American member of the State Assembly, Leslie Herod, is with us. Leslie. Alex Valdez from Denver, Bob Geiser, a former county commissioner, and our very first transgender member of our state assembly, Brianna Titone, is here as well. Congratulations, Brianna. Newly engaged, Brianna. We were all watching Brianna's race. You know, it's nice, Annise. We won by enough. We have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. We were done by like 8 o'clock. You know, we were like, I had friends who were coming to our victory celebration that said, you already declared victory and left. But that's because we won by 10.5 points, which was wonderful. But we had other races. And Brianna's, you know, when I went home late that night, you know, I'm at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, midnight, you know, being the political geek I am, that you all are, come on, we know who's here. We're all checking election results. I'm like, oh, how's Sharice Davids doing? Oh, Kirsten Sinema, is she out of it? Can she pull it off? She did. You know, we didn't know that night. And then in Colorado, Brianna was down some votes, but we saw record turnout in Jefferson County, and we knew that, oh my gosh, maybe it wasn't called yet, maybe those late votes will come in. And like in so many other places, the late votes that came in, that I think Annise, you know, in many ways our grassroots operation, bus tour, door-to-door operation, over 5,000 volunteers for the coordinated campaign, really helped make sure that the voters that were likely to vote our way were casting their ballots. And when all those ballots were counted, not only did Brianna Titone win, but we elected our first lesbian representative from Weld County, Rochelle Galindo, who you met at a small event that we had there. She looked like she was down on election night, and she came back as well. And we truly have a great, diverse group of folks to work with in our state legislature, from different parts of the state, from different walks of life, from different backgrounds, from different ethnicities. And again, we will govern better. We will govern more effectively, and we will create better policy because we'll be able to take advantage of the different ways of thinking and the different backgrounds that people authentically bring to their roles as representatives of the people of Colorado. You know, while we've come a long way, we still, as we know, have a long way to go. In communities across this country, there are still gay and lesbian and transgender youth that are kicked out of their homes simply because of who they are or who they love. There are many states, including my home state, where it's still legal for parents to have their own kids abducted into forced, tortuous conversion therapy programs that are unscientific and ineffective. So while we've come a long way, we have a long way to go. And of course, those of you who, most of you here, have the honor of serving in elected office know that we have to deliver on the promises we made to make life better for our constituents. And I think by doing so, we can show and be role models for that next generation of diverse leadership to take up that challenge to make our communities, your cities, your counties, your states, and our federal government even more effective. It's been a great honor for me to have worked with Victory Fund during my time here. I want to thank all of you for being here and being part of this great network tonight. And hopefully out of this will come a lot of relationships that endure across geography to the betterment of our country in the future. So thank you all. Thank you to Victory Fund. And thank you for helping to make America better.
Y'all can do better than that. It was a big sacrifice for him to be here. Some of you have an idea of how complicated it is to be the governor-elect and be putting together an administration to make sure that when he is sworn in, he's going to be ready to go right off the bat. I also hope that you heard him loudly and clearly that he went through our training. If you know anyone who wants to run, send them to the training. Please, please, please. It absolutely helps. And the other thing I heard, same thing that Tammy Baldwin said, he was at the top of the ticket in Colorado. Tammy was at the top of the ticket in Wisconsin. They had coattails. Brianna was a great candidate. She went through our training this year. but it needed someone at the top of the ticket to generate the excitement and generate the turnout to bring some of those down ballot races across the finish line. So we really appreciate the fact that Governor-elect Polis had a really strong ground game to pull him along.
So the non-Coloradans don't know this, but I actually took away her opponent. So she took on a kind of well-liked, established opponent, a fellow by the name of Lang Sias. My opponent chose that person as their running mate for lieutenant governor. So whisked them out of that race. And then she had a nice open seat to run for, which she was able to win.
Whatever you have to do to make it work. I love the fact that this is actually my first conference as president and CEO, and we are on time for my